You think things are just regular? Talvex appear to be becoming one. Talvex appear to be becoming one. You are already on deck. Talvex. Listen, this is just going to be a video clip that I want to show you. It's a reference to end times. We're living in the end times. And we're closer than you think. I'm not setting dates. I'm just saying from the disasters and things that are going on, this is what I see. This is what you'll see when this financial analyst speaks about it. Remember that saying that you heard before many times, probably follow the money. Consistency. Excuse me. Sorry. This is going crazy. Stop it already. Excuse me for cursing. I curse so what? Gotta get off all this. Gotta get off this thing. They don't want you to hear it.
So y'all, now back in 2023, y'all told me to start stocking up and start collecting food, start collecting things that I need, medicine and all this. And in 2024, the Most High y'all told me to call people and tell them, you need to be stocking up on food, stocking up on this. Money does not matter right now. It is over with. America is done. China has won this war. World War III was not done with a bomb being dropped. It was done with the financial system. And America just went down the drain. No country goes past 250 years. And I told y'all to get away from the cities. And I told y'all to move away from the cities. And I told y'all to stock up on food, water, and seeds. And y'all said I was crazy. You said I was insane. You said I was hearing voices. You said I was schizophrenic. You said I was a witch. You said all kinds of stuff. And you said all this stuff that you done built your life on is worthless now. It is worthless. And they're not going to show you in the United States. The only reason I know about this stuff is because there's people I know that's not in the United States showing this stuff. They're not going to show you this in the United States that what doesn't happen. They ain't. And y'all sitting around here thinking everything okay, and they're distracting you with Puffy and ice and cutting off food stamps and all this. Y'all gonna be suffering. And the Most High y'all poured into us and told us we need to stock up and save, and y'all didn't listen. So that's your ass. That's your ass, because we warned you. We told you. It's over. America lost.
Nigga. Shit. Man. That are going to happen because of that. Let's start it again. This video is 24 minutes, but it's worth it. You got to just listen. You know, we had this stupid interruption. Sorry that I cursed, but anybody don't like it, get off the channel. We don't care about subscribers. Torah Tanakh is small remnant. Okay, hold on. Let's get it right.
He's right, brother. If they don't like what you say, they can get off the channel. They can go somewhere else.
Ray responded. Kazakhstan, Saudi Arabia, and Indonesia, all three have initiated preliminary discussions with the People's Bank of China about transferring portions of their gold reserves to Shanghai. The total gold involved in those three preliminary discussions is approximately 840 million ounces. 840 million ounces of gold, currently stored in vaults in London and New York, is about to move to Shanghai. And when it moves, when those transfers are finalized, the United States dollar will lose its primary advantage. The advantage that has sustained dollar hegemony for 80 years. The advantage of being the only currency with sufficient liquidity, sufficient trust, and sufficient infrastructure to serve as the global reserve. That advantage is over. China just built a competing infrastructure. And they did not just build it, they weaponized it. Let me show you exactly what China has constructed. Let me prove why this is not a symbolic gesture, but a fully operational alternative to the Western financial system. And let me calculate the exact timeline, month by month, for when the dollar loses reserve currency status and what that means for every asset you own, every debt you hold, and every financial decision you will make for the rest of your life. The Shanghai Gold Vault system that China announced on January 15th has been under construction for 3 years. The facility, located in the Pudong district of Shanghai, consists of 6 underground vaults, each with capacity to store approximately 500 million ounces of gold. Total capacity, 3 billion ounces. For context, the total gold held in London Bullion Market Association vaults globally is approximately 900 million ounces. The total gold held in Federal Reserve vaults in New York is approximately 650 million ounces. China built a storage system that can hold double the combined capacity of London and New York. And they built it not for domestic use, they built it for foreign central banks. And the facility operates under a legal structure modeled on Swiss vault regulations. Each central bank that stores gold in Shanghai has segregated allocated storage, meaning the gold bars are individually identified with serial numbers, physically separated from other depositors' gold, and legally owned exclusively by the depositor. The gold cannot be lent, leased, or hypothecated without explicit written consent from the owner. This eliminates the fractional reserve risk that exists in London, where unallocated gold accounts operate on a pooled basis with unclear ownership. China is offering a feature that London cannot match: guaranteed allocated storage with no rehypothecation. The facility provides full insurance through a consortium of Chinese and international insurers, totaling $50 billion in coverage per depositor. The insurance covers theft, loss, damage, and sovereign seizure. That last one, sovereign seizure, is the critical feature, because in 2022, when the United States and European Union froze $300 billion in Russian foreign exchange reserves, central banks around the world realized that holding reserves in Western jurisdictions means those reserves can be confiscated if you fall out of political favor. China's insurance explicitly covers sovereign seizure, meaning if China ever tries to confiscate a depositor's gold, the insurance pays out the full value. And the insurance is backed not just by Chinese entities, but by reinsurers in Switzerland, Singapore, and Dubai, providing international legal recourse. China has built a system that offers better legal protection than London or New York. The facility includes full auditing capability. Any depositor can request an independent third-party audit of their holdings at any time. The audit includes physical bar counts, weight verification, and purity testing. China has hired SGS, Bureau Veritas, and 3 other international auditing firms to provide these services, ensuring that depositors are not relying solely on Chinese assurances. And finally, the facility guarantees full repatriation rights. Any depositor can request physical delivery of their gold to any location in the world with 90 days' notice. China will transport the gold via armored carrier, insured, to the destination of the depositor's choice. No restrictions, no conditions. Compare that to the Federal Reserve. When Germany requested repatriation of its gold from New York in 2013, the Fed told them it would take 7 years to deliver. Germany eventually got their gold, but the delays raised questions about whether the gold was actually there or whether it had been lent out and needed to be reacquired. China is guaranteeing 90-day delivery. That is a competitive advantage. So when you add up allocated storage, $50 billion in insurance, independent audits, and guaranteed repatriation, China has built a vault system that is technically superior to the Western system. But the technical features are not the weapon. The weapon is the settlement currency, because China is not asking central banks to pay vault fees in dollars. They're asking for payment in renminbi. And they are offering renminbi-denominated gold contracts, renminbi gold swaps, and renminbi lines of credit backed by gold collateral. This creates a parallel financial system where central banks can hold reserves, conduct transactions, and settle trades entirely in renminbi without ever touching dollars. And once that system reaches critical mass, once enough central banks have moved enough gold to Shanghai and are conducting enough transactions in renminbi, the dollar loses its network effect. The network effect is the phenomenon where a currency becomes more useful the more people use it. The dollar is the global reserve currency, not because it is backed by gold or because the U.S. economy is the largest, but because everyone else uses dollars, so you have to use dollars to trade with them. But if China...
Okay, so America's money is not backed by gold anymore. It was backed by oil trade. So think about what just happened in Venezuela. We went over, They went over there and hijacked their oil. Why? Because we don't have crude oil. We have a fine oil, but we don't have a crude oil. You can only get crude oil in the other countries. America has fine oil. Okay, so we are out of it. We are out of crude oil. This is why they had to change the gas. Remember when gas used to be thick and it smelled, and if you get it on you, it will burn you, and now it doesn't? That's because we're having to use the American oil, which is a thinner oil. And most countries don't use it. This is why we had to go get oil from other places. This is what happened in 2001. We ran out. That's why they were looking for weapons of mass destruction. But what they was looking for is oil to steal, and they were stealing it. Now, the reserves that America had, we used it up. It started getting used in 2020. Y'all need to know this. You don't know this because you are too busy watching Atlanta Housewives instead of researching. So, because of this, you don't know that we are out of crude oil. We are out of it. We have nothing to back our money anymore. We screwed up. We should have kept our money back on gold. No, we did not. So, guess what? Now, China has just threw in the biggest bomb ever in the world. They just won World War III without dropping a bomb. They just defeated the dollar bill. It is gone. It's useless, and you are wasting your time doing anything that you're doing right now. Everything that you have, you do not own, because if you knew what the true laws is of this land is, they don't own the land. You own the house, you don't own the land. You are renting the land. That's why you have to pay taxes on it. America is in trillions of debts to the American Indians, aka them Negroes. They are in debt to us. You don't know what's going on. You don't own no land. You cannot own nobody else's land. You cannot sell the land. That is the law of the Tanakh. You cannot sell it. You can rent it, but you cannot sell it. And any product, anything on it, they are supposed to be paying us, and they have not. We have trusts that we have no access to because they're too busy stealing out of it. If you knew what I knew, you move different. If you knew what I do, you walk different. But y'all too busy trying to call somebody crazy and call them witch. And I'm letting you know, this is bigger than what you think it is. China just did the biggest move that they could ever do. Boom. They got everything backed by gold. And they got insurance for the back their gold. It's over. America's over. You might as well go and get ready. You finna go and get ready. If you got a chance, you got an opportunity to get your ass up out of here, get up off our land. If you don't, it's your ass. That's it.
Creates a parallel network where you can trade in renminbi, settle in gold, and avoid dollars entirely. The network effect shifts. And once it shifts, it does not shift back. Now let me show you the numbers, because China has been preparing for this moment for over a decade. And the preparation shows in their gold accumulation strategy. As of December 31st, 2025, China's official gold reserves stood at 74.15 million ounces, or 2,303.5 tons. That is up from 62.64 million ounces, or 1,948 tons, at the end of 2024, an increase of 11.51 million ounces in 1 year. But those are the official reserves, the reserves that the People's Bank of China reports publicly. Industry analysts estimate that China's actual gold holdings, including gold held by state-owned enterprises, sovereign wealth funds, and undisclosed central bank purchases, total between 180 million and 220 million ounces. Why the discrepancy? Because China has a long history of underreporting gold reserves and then revealing the true number years later. In 2009, China announced that its gold reserves were 33.89 million ounces, double the previously reported figure. The revelation shocked markets because China had been accumulating for 6 years without disclosure. The same pattern is likely occurring now. China reports 74 million ounces. The real number is probably 180 to 220 million. And even that does not include the gold held by Chinese citizens and private entities. According to the World Gold Council, Chinese consumers purchased 510 tons of gold jewelry in 2024 and an estimated 240 tons of gold bars and coins. That is 750 tons, or 24 million ounces, of private gold demand in 1 year. Over a decade, private Chinese gold holdings easily exceed 300 million ounces. When you add official reserves, undisclosed state holdings, and private holdings, China controls approximately 500 million to 600 million ounces of gold. That is more than the United States official gold reserve of 261.5 million ounces. China has more gold than America, and they accumulated it quietly, methodically, without triggering a price spike that would have made accumulation expensive. That is strategic planning. But the gold is not just a store of value, it is a weapon, because China is using gold to back renminbi internationalization. The renminbi, also called the yuan, currently represents approximately 5% of global payment transactions, according to SWIFT data. That is up from 3% in 2024. 5% does not sound like much until you realize the dollar represents 56% and the euro represents 20%. 5% makes the renminbi the fifth most used currency globally, ahead of the Japanese yen and the British pound. But 5% is not enough to challenge dollar dominance. China needs the renminbi to reach 15 to 20% to create a viable alternative. And the way to do that is to back the renminbi with gold. Not a formal gold standard. China is not going to make the renminbi convertible to gold at a fixed rate. That would constrain monetary policy. Instead, China is creating an implicit gold backing. They are saying to central banks, if you hold renminbi, you can convert those renminbi to gold through our Shanghai vault system at market prices. You do not have a legal guarantee of conversion, but you have operational capability. That makes the renminbi a quasi-gold-backed currency. And when central banks compare holding dollars, which are backed by the full faith and credit of a $36 trillion indebted government, versus holding renminbi, which can be converted to physical...
They're $36 trillion in debt to the American Indian because they're on this land. And they're supposed to have been paying us for anything that they earned. They had to pay a percentage, and they have not did it. This is why they keep saying that we cannot pay us. We cannot pay them reparations, because if they pay us reparations, they got to pay us for the whole time they've been here. That's why they won't do it. They'll give everybody else money, but not us. Why? Because we still own this land. That's why they can't kick us off. They'll put you in jail here. They'll unalive you here. But they ain't never rolled up and pulled up in trucks, loaded us up, and drop our ass off in another country. They can't.
Gold stored in Shanghai vaults, the calculus changes. Gold-backed renminbi becomes attractive, and once central banks start diversifying reserves into renminbi, once they start using renminbi for trade settlement, once they start holding renminbi-denominated bonds, the dollar's share of global reserves declines, and that decline is already happening. According to the International Monetary Fund, the dollar's share of global foreign exchange reserves fell from 62% in 2020 to 56.3% in the second quarter of 2025, a 5.7 percentage point decline in 5 years. That is the fastest decline since the euro was introduced in 1999, and the decline is accelerating. In 2025 alone, the dollar's share fell 1.4 percentage points. At that rate, the dollar falls below 50% by 2028. Below 50% is the tipping point. That is when the dollar stops being the dominant reserve currency and becomes one reserve currency among several. And when that happens, when the dollar loses dominance, the consequences for the United States economy are catastrophic. Let me explain the consequences step by step, because most people do not understand what reserve currency status actually provides. Reserve currency status means that foreign central banks, foreign corporations, and foreign investors hold dollars and dollar-denominated assets as savings. They hold U.S. Treasury bonds. They hold dollar bank deposits. They hold dollar-denominated corporate bonds and equities. The total amount of dollars and dollar assets held by foreigners is approximately $33 trillion. $33 trillion. For context, that is larger than the entire U.S. gross domestic product, which is $29 trillion. Foreigners hold more dollar assets than the entire annual output of the U.S. economy. Why? Because the dollar is the global reserve currency. It is the safe asset. But if the dollar loses reserve status, if central banks start diversifying into renminbi and gold, they sell dollar assets and buy renminbi assets and gold. What happens when you sell $33 trillion worth of assets? Prices collapse. Treasury bond yields spike. The dollar crashes. Interest rates in the U.S. explode because the U.S. government can no longer borrow cheaply. Right now, the U.S. government pays an average interest rate of approximately 3.5% on its debt. With $36 trillion in debt, that is $1.26 trillion in annual interest payments. If reserve currency status is lost and foreigners sell treasuries, yields could spike to 7, 8, 10%. At 10% average interest rate, the annual interest payment on $36 trillion is $3.6 trillion. The entire federal budget is currently $6.8 trillion. Interest payments alone would consume 53% of the budget. That is unsustainable. The government would face a choice: default on the debt, cut spending by half, or print money to pay the interest. We know which choice they make. They print, and when they print $3.6 trillion per year just for interest, hyperinflation begins. Not 5% inflation, not 10%, 30, 40, 50% annual inflation. The value of the dollar collapses domestically and internationally. Savings evaporate. Purchasing power is destroyed. The middle class is annihilated. This is not hypothetical. This is the mathematical outcome when a country with $36 trillion in debt loses reserve currency status. And China's gold vault announcement is the mechanism that triggers that loss. Because once central banks have a viable alternative, once they can store gold in Shanghai, settle in renminbi, and avoid dollar exposure, they will do it. Not all at once. Gradually, but inexorably. And the timeline has already started. Let me show you the timeline month by month. January 2026. 3 central banks, Kazakhstan, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, begin preliminary discussions with China about moving gold to Shanghai. Discussions focus on logistics, insurance terms, and settlement agreements. Media coverage is limited. Markets largely ignore the announcement. February 2026. The first transfer occurs. Kazakhstan moves 40 million ounces of gold from London to Shanghai. The transfer is executed via armored transport, insured with full documentation. It takes 12 days. Upon arrival, SGS conducts an independent audit confirming bar counts and purity. Kazakhstan issues a press release stating the move is part of reserve diversification. Financial media begins paying attention. March 2026, Saudi Arabia announces it will transfer 120 million ounces of gold to Shanghai. This is the major headline. Saudi Arabia holds approximately 320 million ounces in total reserves. Moving 120 million, nearly 40%, to Shanghai is a geopolitical statement. The announcement is made during a state visit by the Chinese premier to Riyadh. The two countries also sign agreements expanding renminbi-denominated oil trade. Markets react. The dollar index falls 3% in one day. Treasury.
Because remember, our money is backed by oil. It's over with, y'all. It's over with.
Yields spike 40 basis points. Gold jumps from $4,200 to $4,580 per ounce. April 2026. Indonesia, Malaysia, and Thailand announced gold transfers to Shanghai, totaling 80 million ounces combined. The ASEAN bloc is clearly coordinating. Within days, the Philippines and Vietnam make similar announcements. Total ASEAN gold moving to Shanghai, 140 million ounces. The dollar index falls another 5%. U.S. Treasury yields hit 6.2%, the highest since 2007. The Federal Reserve holds an emergency meeting. They issue a statement saying they are monitoring the situation and stand ready to provide liquidity if needed. Translation, they are panicking. May 2026, India announces a partial transfer. India holds over 47 million ounces officially. They announce they will move 20 million ounces to Shanghai as a test. If the test is successful, they will consider moving more. Russia, which is already partially isolated from Western financial systems, moves its entire remaining gold reserves held in non-Russian vaults to Shanghai, approximately 60 million ounces. The total gold now stored in Shanghai vaults for foreign central banks exceeds 460 million ounces. That is more than half the total gold stored in London. The tipping point is crossed. June 2026, Brazil, South Africa, and Egypt announced transfers. BRICS nations, minus China, which is the host, are consolidating reserves in Shanghai. The message is clear. The BRICS bloc is exiting the dollar system. The total gold in Shanghai vaults for foreigners exceeds 600 million ounces. Markets are in freefall. The S&P 500 is down 23% year to date. Treasury yields are at 7.8%. The dollar has lost 14% of its value against a basket of currencies. Inflation in the U.S. hits 8.2% annualized. July 2026. Germany shocks the world. Germany, a core U.S. ally and NATO member, announces it will conduct a pilot transfer of 50 million ounces to Shanghai. The stated reason is reserve diversification and risk management. The real reason is that Germany sees the writing on the wall. If the dollar is losing reserve status, Germany needs to position itself in the emerging renminbi system. France follows within a week, 50 million ounces to Shanghai. The European Union is fracturing. Some members follow Germany and France. Others, particularly Poland and the Baltic states, refuse. But the damage is done. Total foreign gold in Shanghai vaults exceeds 800 million ounces. August 2026. The Federal Reserve announces emergency measures. Interest rates are cut by 150 basis points in a single meeting. Quantitative easing is restarted. The Fed will buy $1 trillion in treasuries over 6 months to prevent yield spike, but the measures backfire. The rate cut and QE are seen as desperation. The dollar falls another 8%. Inflation accelerates to 12% annualized. Gold hits $6,200 per ounce. By late August 2026, the dollar's share of global reserves has fallen to 48%, below 50. The tipping point. The dollar is no longer the dominant reserve currency. It is one reserve currency among several, with the renminbi at 18%, the euro at 22%, and gold itself increasingly held as a reserve asset at 12%. The era of dollar hegemony is over, and it took 8 months from China's announcement to the collapse. Now let me tell you what this means for you personally. Because the collapse of dollar hegemony is not an abstract geopolitical event. It is a direct, immediate, catastrophic impact on your finances. If you hold dollar-denominated assets, stocks, bonds, real estate priced in dollars, the value collapses. Not because the underlying assets are worthless, but because the currency they are priced in is losing purchasing power. If inflation runs at 12% and your stock portfolio gains 8%, you lost 4% in real terms. If inflation runs at 20% and your bond pays 5%, you lost 15%. If inflation runs at 30% and your savings account pays 1%, you lost 29%. The only assets that hold value during currency collapse are hard assets: gold, silver, commodities. Real estate, but only a few own it without debt. If you have a mortgage, inflation helps you because you pay back the debt with devalued dollars. But if you are a saver, if you are holding cash or bonds or dollar-denominated assets, you're wiped out. Let me give you the math. If you have $100,000 in savings today and inflation runs at an average of 20% annually for 3 years, which is the conservative estimate if the dollar loses reserve status, your $100,000 becomes worth $57,600 in purchasing power. You lose 42.4% of your wealth, not from market crash, from currency debasement. If you have $1 million in a retirement account invested in U.S. stocks and bonds, and those assets nominally hold value, but the dollar loses 40% of purchasing power, your $1 million becomes $600,000 in real terms. If you have $10 million, it becomes $6 million. The wealth destruction is proportional. It hits everyone, but it hits savers hardest. People who did everything right, who saved money, who invested conservatively, who trusted the system, get destroyed. Meanwhile, people who own hard assets, who own gold, who own silver, who own commodities, see their wealth explode. Not because they are smarter, because they position themselves in assets that hold value when currencies collapse. This is the greatest wealth transfer in human history, and it starts with China's gold vault announcement on January 15th, 2026. Now let me tell you what to do, because you have a choice. You can act now, or you can wait and watch your wealth evaporate. If you hold significant dollar-denominated financial assets, diversify.
Y'all, this already happened. This already happened. They announced this already. Why didn't we hear about it?
Immediately. Allocate a minimum of 20% of your portfolio to physical gold and silver, not ETFs, not mining stocks. Physical metal that you hold, or that is stored in allocated accounts with your name on specific bars. If you can allocate 30 or 40% to hard assets, even better. If you have debt, particularly fixed-rate debt like a mortgage, do not pay it off early. Inflation is about to make that debt worthless in real terms. You borrowed dollars when they were strong. You will pay back dollars when they are weak. That is a transfer of wealth from the creditor to you. Use the money you would have spent paying down debt to buy hard assets. If you have cash savings beyond an emergency fund, convert it. Do not hold large cash balances. 6 months of expenses in cash is reasonable for emergencies. Everything beyond that should be in hard assets or inflation-protected securities. If you own a business, start accepting payments in multiple currencies. Offer discounts for payments in euros, renminbi, or even Bitcoin. Diversify your revenue streams away from dollar dependence. If you're planning major purchases, cars, appliances, home renovations, do them now before inflation drives prices higher. If you wait 6 months, the same car could cost 20% more. And if you are young, if you are early in your career, focus on skills that will remain valuable regardless of currency. Tradespeople, electricians, plumbers, carpenters will always have work. Computer programmers, engineers, medical professionals, always in demand. Build skills that cannot be devalued by currency collapse, because the currency will collapse. China's gold vault system guarantees it. The timeline is 8 to 14 months from January 15th. By late 2026 or early 2027, the dollar will have lost reserve currency status. And when it does, when foreign central banks and investors dump $33 trillion in assets, the collapse will be swift and brutal. This is not a recession. This is not a correction. This is the end of an 80-year system. The system that began in July 1944 at Bretton Woods, when the dollar became the global reserve currency backed by gold. The system that continued after August 1971, when Nixon ended gold convertibility and the dollar became a pure fiat currency backed only by trust. That system is ending now. Saturday, January 17th, 2026. 2 days after China declared financial war. The war will not be fought with missiles. It will be fought with gold bars moving from London and New York to Shanghai. And the United States has already lost. Because the U.S. cannot offer what China is offering. The U.S. cannot guarantee allocated storage without rehypothecation. The U.S. has been leasing and lending gold for decades. The U.S. cannot guarantee against sovereign seizure. The U.S. literally just froze $300 billion in Russian reserves. The U.S. cannot offer insurance backed by neutral international entities. The U.S. is not neutral. The U.S. is a combatant. China, by contrast, has built a system that is technically superior, legally sound, and politically advantageous for any country that wants to exit dollar dependence. And once the first major transfers occur, once Saudi Arabia moves 120 million ounces, once Germany moves 50 million, the cascade begins. Other countries see the train leaving and they rush to get on board. The fear of missing out on the new system, combined with the fear of being left holding worthless dollars, drives a stampede. And stampedes are impossible to stop. This is World War III of finance. It started Thursday. And by this time, next year, the world will look completely different. The dollar will no longer be king. Gold will be king. And the countries holding gold, the countries storing gold in Shanghai, the countries settling trade in renminbi backed by gold, will be the new financial powers. China planned this for over a decade. They accumulated gold quietly. They built the infrastructure secretly. They launched at the perfect moment. And they executed flawlessly. The United States had 80 years of dollar hegemony. That era is over. The new era, the era of multipolar currency systems, the era of gold-backed trade settlement, the era of de-dollarization starts now. And if
Now y'all see this. Now, if you don't have food on hand, if you are not stocked up with rice and beans and waters and none of that stuff, you are going to be out here suffering. You're going to be suffering. I got 2 years worth of stuff saved up. And I didn't go over here trying to save stuff up in money. I don't consider money nothing no more because y'all already showed me that it's nothing. You need to be able to feed yourself without this government. And you need to be able to help yourself without this government. And as for these people that's on the land, well, you don't own the house. I got to. Because I am American Indian. I am a native to this land. And as long as I'm following these laws, statutes, commandments, the Most High y'all go protect me. And he go place me in my house. I already saw my house. Y'all already showed it to me. So I am good. I'm just waiting for all this to fall. Every day I wake up, every day, waiting on this to fall because y'all already showed me it's coming. And I told y'all, and y'all don't want to listen. It started in September, but y'all ain't listening. Y'all ain't listening to Yah. He poured this out to all of us. Y'all ain't listen. We warned you. We warned y'all, and y'all didn't listen. So now, what my grandma used to say, a horror head make a what? Saw fast. You finna fuck around and find out about Yah and his plan. And we'll give him all the praise and all the glory and all the esteem. All praise to the Most High Yah and him alone. Hallelujah. Woo!